Meet Elise, a 33-year-old corporate professional who's been happily married to Luke for 2 years. Luke, 3 years her senior, works at a sister company to hers. Since the beginning, they've been residing with his parents in a two-family home arrangement. Luke, the younger of 2 brothers, has an elder sibling named Cody, who's 6 years his senior. Before Elise and Luke tied the knot, it seemed like Cody and his parents were the primary occupants of the household. However, Cody's wife, Chris, known for her talkative nature and competitive spirit, often found herself at odds with her equally strong-willed mother-in-law. Eventually, Cody and his father had enough of the family disputes and decided to move out. Despite living alone since he started working, Luke and Elise never seriously considered the idea of residing separately from his parents. So when Luke's mom suddenly declared that they would be moving in after marriage, it caught both Elise and Luke off guard. Elise had assumed they would continue living in her current apartment until they decided to start a family, as it was convenient for her commute. However, it seemed that living together was inevitable in their family's eyes. Although the idea initially unsettled them, they realized that the commute wouldn't differ much whether they stayed at Luke's apartment or his parents' house. Besides, the ancestral home, crafted by Luke's grandfather, boasted both a main house and a guest house, promising ample privacy. Reluctantly, they agreed to move in. However, Elise soon found herself regretting the decision. Luke's mother, in her mid-60s, began complaining about back pain and dizziness, leaving all household chores from cleaning to laundry and shopping squarely on Elise's shoulders. As a full-time worker, even sharing chores with Luke barely managed to keep our lives and his parents' lives in order. Then, an unexpected financial burden hit us. Firstly, the guest house needed serious renovations. Initially appearing livable from the outside, stepping in revealed a dire need for more than just patch jobs. The bathroom, kitchen, roof, floors, everything showed significant wear and tear. Yet it was our space, and naturally, we committed to paying for the renovations. What caught us off guard was when my mother-in-law demanded the same renovations for the main house upon seeing the newly refurbished guest house. It seemed inconceivable to fix up our space and leave them in a rundown place. However, we couldn't afford to do everything all at once. Why is Elise working then? To support us, her in-laws? My mother-in-law questioned. Exactly, Luke, we blessed you with marriage. You should serve us in return. So not only did they want the house renovated, but they also desired new high-end furniture and appliances, claiming the newly renovated rooms deserved the best. Additionally, they made us pay for every little thing, from groceries to household items. Thanks to this situation, Luke and I struggled to save even a tiny bit of money every month. Just as we approached the 3rd year, my mother-in-law and the Cody couple suddenly dropped the bomb. We're moving in, you have to move out. Christy explained that Cody got laid off, although he was actually spared but chose to leave to save a collie with kids. Despite having 1-year-old twins himself, he was deemed more responsible due to his prestigious university background. Facing this ultimatum, Luke and I sat down with my in-laws, pleading our case for hours until we finally conceded, fine, we'll move out this week. It was clear that we had no other choice. We've learned plenty about family from you, mother-in-law and father-in-law. It's time to put that wisdom into practice, right, Luke? I teased, glancing at my husband. Ha, finally getting it, are you? Luke chuckled. Yeah, just like Elise said, we're happy to do it. Great, case closed, he affirmed. With that, Luke and I turned our backs on our chuckling in-laws and headed for the guest house. 2 weeks later, we had movers arranged and relocated with no time to spare. Opting for the full packing service due to time constraints, we timed our move during my in-laws' regular lunch at karaoke with friends to avoid any complaints about the items we were taking. We wrapped up all the formalities in 3 days, utilizing our paid leaves and starting our new life. However, one day, I received a call from the front desk at work, informing me that someone claiming to be family was there to see me. I had a feeling she'd show up soon, but I didn't expect her to barge in on me instead of Luke. Quickly texting Luke about the situation, I braced myself for the inconvenience. Luke's response came swiftly, suggesting that we ask Maya to step out for a meeting to avoid causing trouble at the office. Passing the message to the front desk, we managed to make our in-laws leave as agreed. That night, as Luke and I pulled into the parking lot of our in-laws' compound, they, along with Cody and his spouse, rushed out of the main house and guest house to greet us. Upon closer inspection, I noticed that both my in-laws had a baby strapped to their backs, probably Cody's twins. As I locked the car, Cody's voice boomed angrily. "Hey, how dare you show up here in my parents' cars?" Luke remained composed, retorting, "Your parents' cars? Which ones are those?" This seemed to infuriate Cody even more. "The cars you both drove up in, obviously," he exclaimed. "Well, Cody, both these cars were purchased by us. Our names are even on the registration certificates. Would you like to see?" Luke interjected, stepping in. "I've been annoyed by how our parents drive these cars as if they own them. We let it slide because we live together, but now there's no need to lend them out, right?" I added, feeling a surge of irritation. "Don't forget Dad-in-law has that old minivan he used for work," Chrissy chimed in, glaring at us. "Who cares about that old car?" spat Cody. "But it's perfect for twins, isn't it? You can fit 2 car seats," I retorted, attempting to reason. Our back and forth made our in-laws uncomfortable. After seeing Cody receive a talking to about the cars, they jumped in. "What about the furniture and the appliances? Taking them while we're away? That's stealing, not just from the main house, but also from the guest house," Cody argued. "Yes, Cody, and I can't live without those," Chrissy added. "Why would we have to leave them? Look, I get what you're saying. We're using the guest house anyway. But there's no reason to dip into the main house too," Luke reasoned. "Why isn't that stuff we all pitched in for?" I asked, trying to understand their logic. "Such arrogance. Even so, once you gave it, it's ours," father-in-law fired back. "Whoa, hold on. We never gave you anything. We just lent it. There's no memory of us ever saying we're giving it to you, and there's no transfer of ownership on paper," Luke countered, shocking both our in-laws. "We were living together, so we lent stuff as a courtesy. Now that we're living separately, why would we keep lending you things? We just took back what's ours. Is that a problem?" Luke continued, exchanging smiles with me. "Well, we have washing machines and fridges too. You don't need 2 of each, do you?" they argued. "Exactly, so why not lend it to us again? Wherever you've moved, stuffing everything into a small space will just make it even more cramped," Luke concluded. We exchanged grins, acknowledging our cramped living situation. "True, we're pretty packed right now," I admitted. "Absolutely, it's a tight fit," Luke agreed. Chrissy began, "In that case." But we cut her off. "Remember, it's a storage room, so it's supposed to be cramped," I chuckled. "Exactly. Until the official contract is done, this is how it has to be," Luke concluded. This left Cody and our in-laws utterly confused. Then Luke dropped a bombshell. "Oh, by the way, both of us are moving to Boston next month." Luke smoothly explained that we had both originally been offered positions at the corporate headquarters but had turned them down because we were living with my in-laws. However, now that the obstacle of living with them was removed, we had both accepted the transfers and happily received internal notifications for positions at the corporate headquarters. Even better, if all went well, we could be working there till retirement. As luck would have it, Luke's colleague, who was going overseas for an extended period, wanted to sell his high-rise condo. Everything fell into place quickly. "You guys are going to live in a high-rise condo in Boston? Man, life sure does throw some curveballs, doesn't it?" Cody remarked. "Totally. If Cody and the gang hadn't told us to move out so they could live here, we wouldn't have stumbled upon this jackpot," I replied. "But how could we even afford a high-rise condo?" "That seems unreal," Chrissy questioned. "That's thanks to Alisa's dad. He provided the down payment," Luke revealed. "Alisa's dad just gave you the down payment?" Cody asked, surprised. "Yes, my sister is inheriting the family property, so this is sort of a trade-off. Plus, a previous owner asked if we could hold on to his modern altar until, upon my return to the country, I proposed lowering the asking price, and he agreed, securing a significant discount. However, hearing about the extent of the discount, Christy, who was standing nearby, burst into tears, exclaiming, "That's so unfair. I'd rather have a high-rise condo in Boston than live in Atlanta." Suddenly, the in-laws, who had been quiet all this time, switched gears and started fawning. "Well, it looks like Luke really has it together, doesn't he? Like mother, like son. Luke is following in my footsteps," they chimed in. Ignoring their comments, Luke turned to me and said, "Living in a high-rise in Boston, everyone's going to be so jealous. When are you moving? We must visit. If we're going to Boston, you should come too," I suggested. The idea seemed to intrigue them. However, the mood shifted when Cody and Christy stopped their arguing and snapped at the in-laws. "What are you talking about? Cody's being downsized, so you're going to have to support us. Plus, until I find another job, Christy will have to go back to work early from her parental leave. You'll have to take care of her household chores and the twins," they confronted. As tension mounted, Cody and Christy marched up to the in-laws who were carrying the twins. The babies, sensing the tension, started crying, waking up the entire neighborhood. Noticing the neighbors gathering at a distance from the garage, the in-laws turned beet red. Luke finally intervened, addressing Cody and the others. "Stop just standing there. Exactly, these guys are trying to take advantage of us, your parents." Luke's laughter echoed as he continued. "So, this is like a battle of wits between a raccoon and a fox, huh?" Turning to the bewildered faces around him, he grinned and explained, "If both couples, us and you, don't work, our family finances will collapse next month." Fuming, Christy asked what this meant. I chimed in, "Christy, you thought if Cody lost his job and you moved into the in-laws' rental home, you could just push the utility bills and groceries onto them, right? Well, our income was running this house and you can't count on it anymore." "I've never heard about this, exactly what we're telling you now," I admitted, puzzled. "Oh, and you'll also need to help with the mortgage payments for the house renovation. It's in father-in-law's name," Luke added. "Why is it in his name?" I questioned, catching the in-laws off guard. Luke took over, explaining, "I wanted the loan in my name since I was paying for it, but Dad insisted it would be shameful. So we used this property as collateral. Until now, we've been transferring money into Dad's account to cover the loan. Cody, you'll need to chip in starting next month." Of course, the in-laws and Cody were against it, but Luke firmly declined to continue payments. "We're going to give up the inheritance. So Cody, as the one who will inherit, you better take good care of your parents and the family home," I firmly told him. "But children are still obligated to take care of their parents, right?" my mother-in-law insisted. Luke brushed it off, saying, "Well, considering we've been covering your living expenses and loan payments for the past 2 years, I'd say that pretty much balances out any future caregiving costs I'd have as a son, don't you think?" "Let's go home, love," Luke said, looking at me. "Goodbye, everyone. I doubt we'll meet again." "Take care," I said, bidding farewell. The next day, Luke and I sold off the furniture and appliances we had moved from the main house, along with 2 cars we wouldn't need anymore. When Chrissy texted us asking for them, I simply replied, "Why?" and blocked her. After that, the special leave granted for our job transfer wasn't enough, so we had to use up our remaining paid vacations to finally finish moving into the apartment. Buying the high-rise condo would take more time, so for the first year, we decided to rent, thanks to the generosity of my boss who owns the place. As the weekend arrived, bringing a bit of calm after the storm of recent days, we gazed at the city lights, and Luke broke the silence. "I know I've been a hassle this time, but thanks for sticking with me," I said, feeling grateful for Luke's patience. "What's with the formal tone all of a sudden?" Luke joked, but then his expression turned serious. "When we first got married and the idea of living together came up, I should have thought things through. But back then, I was just happy you chose me over Cody, who I've been compared to since we were kids." He continued, reflecting on how we had mindlessly followed his parents' wishes until they told us to move out to make room for Cody and his family due to the company restructuring. It struck me, how could they say that after being such a burden on us financially and otherwise? Luke wondered aloud. "And then I thought about how much your parents must worry about you given your situation." He explained that he sent an apology email to my parents, and their response was heartening. "If we promise to make our daughter happy in the future, the past can be forgiven." Encouraged by this, when they discussed the down payment, they lent it to us without a hitch. Luke made a promise to do everything in his power to protect our life together, just the 2 of us and our future children, if we were blessed to have them. However, on the other hand, it seemed my in-laws were struggling. Despite pulling from their retirement income, they could barely afford the loan for the home renovation. With Cody's attempts to find new employment proving futile, they were forced to make do with Christy's salary now that she had returned to work. Arguments were frequent, often loud enough to hear outside the house. A former colleague even reached out to me, mentioning gossip about them skipping town, as they had cut off all contact with Luke and me. They even resorted to reaching out to my parents, but my dad immediately changed his phone number, seeing it as a small but significant step, given how they had belittled my family and neglected pre-marriage courtesies. Now, they had almost no way to get in touch with us. What goes around comes around, I mused. My name is Angelique, and I've just graduated from college. I'm a newbie at my job, undergoing the standard new employee training, akin to orientation, on my day off. My best friend, whom I've known since kindergarten and all through high school, asked me about it with curiosity. Though we attended the same college, we pursued different majors. She continued on to grad school, so she's keen on my transition into working adult life. You won't believe it, I said, recounting my experience. We start with a morning run every day as part of building our stamina. Really? Everyone, she exclaimed, evidently surprised by the rigor. It seems so. It's like a first taste of the toughness of working life. Unless there's a specific reason, everyone up to their second year participates. Those with 3 years or more are exempt. But still, about half of the entire company joins in. The other half opts for activities like crosswords or brain training exercises. Whoa, interesting. I totally skipped the exercise part though, she chuckled, amused. Our company motto is also unique, I continued. It's something like always be healthy, work hard, play hard, and live a long, active life. So, for the first 30 minutes after starting work, we have time for physical and mental exercises. That is really unique, she remarked. I can interact with people from all ages and departments. It feels like an extension of a club or group in school. It's fun. I really do love the company I've joined. But don't you seem kind of tired? You're really observant, I replied, somewhat taken aback by her sharp observation. Yes, overall the atmosphere at the company is okay. But there is one, if not the only colossal obstacle, a supremely arrogant individual who stands in my way. You want to quit? She asked, concerned. Oh, I see. Just as I thought, you lack determination. I smiled, shaking my head. The woman who is my manager is complaining bitterly on a call with a part-timer who has been absent for a few days. Her loud voice, meant to be heard, seems to be filled with malice, pushing the other person into a corner. The manager, whispered as the queen of damaging sighs, has the destructive power to completely demoralize the person on the receiving end of her tirade, I explained. She's like, I'm taking a break, and then all of a sudden doesn't show up for days, neglecting her duties. And now she says she's quitting. How carefree. Just because she's part-time doesn't mean I'll let her get away with this. I'll push her to the very end. This goes beyond sarcasm. It's downright terrifying, I continued. The last day the part-timer came in, I noticed her body stiffened, tears welling up in her eyes. What's wrong? Are you okay? I asked. She had been scolded by the manager again. She was trembling as she spoke. It must have taken a lot of courage for her to make this phone call. Since the manager has no choice but to accept her resignation, it would be better to just let her go without any more sarcastic remarks. It's been about a month since I joined the company. Considering that the first week was just going around and learning from all the departments in the company, I've encountered similar situations twice in the short span of 3 weeks, I sighed. It's so inconvenient. She hardly does her work and just drags everyone down. All I'm doing is pointing that out. The manager, secretly referred to as the Empress in the company, always has deep wrinkles between her eyebrows. It takes effort to replace her. It's only natural that she should have the consideration to find a replacement and finish the handover before she quits, right? The tension spreads among the employees present as the manager seeks agreement, I explained. Everyone pretended to be focused on their work, nodding without making eye contact with the manager. However, she caught on. You seem to have a problem, she said, as I recalled the face of the part-timer. I found myself ensnared in the scrutinizing gaze of the Empress. I'll ask you once you receive your salary. You should take responsibility for your work, right? I guess, I replied, feeling the weight of her deliberate question. There seemed to be no other option but to agree, and the manager knew it, directing the inquiry squarely at me. Do you think it's okay to act selfishly in the workplace? She continued. No, but selfishness is the enemy of work, right? I started to argue back, but her loud voice cut me off. In the end, I wasn't allowed to say anything. I regretted my inability to intervene for the crying part-timer and that I simply let the manager have her way. That's bound to stress you out. I'm sorry, I just keep complaining. I was supposed to be bragging about the company, but before I knew it, it was all just one-sided complaints. I lamented to my friend. It's okay, you can't keep things bottled up, and it's not your fault. If you resist too much, you'll be the next target. A manager who mixes up power and authority is the worst. Be careful not to get on her bad side, okay? She warned, offering solace. Thanks, I replied, feeling grateful for her understanding. Then I broached the main topic about the trip. I think I can cover the cost with my part-time job savings from college and my first paycheck. I'm thinking of taking my grandparents to the resort you told me about before. Do you think they'll be pleased? This was the real issue I wanted to discuss. She was well informed about traveling, having done so extensively with her family. Of course, the end is one that even my picky grandmother was completely satisfied with. You can't go wrong, she assured me with a smile. I'm glad. I really want to make it a good memory since we're doing it, I expressed, feeling relieved. I had been planning a trip with my grandparents using the money I had diligently saved up. They were the ones who raised me in place of my parents who passed away when I was young. I wanted to give something back to the two of them who always put me first and supported me, so I had been saving money from part-time jobs since my college days. Seeing my friend smile, my cheeks also relaxed. However, it was Friday afternoon, the day before the trip. I was summoned by the manager and approached her desk. Classify these by category and analyze them. They're documents to be used at the beginning of next week, she instructed, her lips adorned with unusually bright lipstick and a smug smile etched on her face. I blinked in surprise as I saw the pile of thick documents before me. You want me to analyze this by the end of the break? I asked, incredulous. There were several binders, each one incredibly heavy, and they were all disorganized. Just sorting and classifying them alone would likely consume the entire day, let alone analyzing them on top of that. To my bewilderment, the manager responded with a victorious air. I'm glad you understand my orders. You've been ignoring instructions recently, you see. Unable to hold back the unreasonable accusations, I decided to stand my ground. I hate to point out, but it's Friday and there are barely 2 hours left until the end of the day. It's simply impossible to finish these documents by the beginning of next week. I attempted to remain calm, but ever since our part-time worker left, the manager seemed to have singled me out for intensified harassment. She excluded me from office memos, issued incorrect instructions, and then blamed me for misunderstanding. On top of that, she dumped an unmanageable amount of work on me, which clashed with my long-awaited vacation plans. It seemed like my objections didn't bother the manager at all. You're going to use it at the beginning of the week, right? It's fine if you come in over the weekend to finish it. Oh, and just to let you know, these documents are confidential, so don't take them home. Please, wait a second. I tried to argue, but the manager interrupted. I have a meeting soon, and I'm leaving directly from here today, before leaving the pile of documents on the desk and walking out. The next day, my planned trip with my grandparents lay under the expansive sky. As they noticed my stifled yawns, they grew concerned. Are you okay? Staying up all night and then going on a trip? Maybe we should have canceled. I'm fine, don't worry. I was really looking forward to this trip today, I reassured them. Yeah, I could sense their worry knowing I had worked all night and rushed home just in time for our departure. I couldn't let my fatigue dampen our special trip. No, this won't do. It's a special trip, so I have to make it enjoyable. I mustered up some cheer and directed a smile toward my grandparents. Look at this view, it's amazing. The sea is so beautiful. Don't worry about me. I worked hard so that I could enjoy delicious food, soak in the hot spring, and sleep soundly on a fluffy bed. My attempt at lightheartedness seemed to relax them, and they began to enjoy the scenery with relieved expressions. But amidst the enjoyment, a nightmare awaited me. Did you finish the job I asked for? You didn't quit, did you? A familiar voice startled me as I strolled alone in the inn after checking in. Why here of all places? I muttered to myself, but the manager, seemingly reading my thoughts, snorted and left. I ruined your weekend to teach you a lesson. I thought it was unlikely, but as I thought, you ignored my instructions, didn't you? The manager's words felt like a curse, and I was overcome with dizziness. The thought of being given work to ruin my vacation filled me with anger. But how did you know about my plans? I asked, astonished. You were chattering away during break time. Where are you going? When are you going? Oh, I'm so jealous. You were so pleased being praised by everybody. It was hilarious, she replied casually, revealing her eavesdropping habits. Realizing that my innocuous chats with colleagues were being carefully listened to, I felt the chill. Besides, I'm surprised. This ain't as too good for you, she continued, her tone dripping with disdain. Excuse me? I responded, confused. You don't get it. It's an eyesore to see commoners wandering around. Look, there's a rundown inn next door that's more your style, she sneered. I don't understand what you mean. I know you find me an eyesore, but the rest is just insults and harassment, right? I retorted, feeling my anger rise. Just as my frustration reached its peak, a voice of support came from behind me. Is that what this is about? My grandparents had arrived, standing by my side. The people whom I thought were peacefully drinking tea in the room were suddenly standing behind me. Judging from their expressions, they must have overheard almost all of my conversation with the manager. This is, I began hurriedly, but my grandfather cut me off and addressed the manager. Nice to meet you. I'm Angelique's grandfather and have been her guardian for many years. Perhaps it's quicker to tell you that I'm the honorary chairman of the trading company that was discussing a deal with your company the other day. At those words, the manager's face turned pale. The honorary chairman of the industry, but your name is different from this employee's. Yes, she goes by her maternal family name. Otherwise, she would be viewed differently as a member of a famous company's founding family, right? My grandfather explained calmly. I don't want my precious granddaughter to have a tough time at the company where she works. I'm terribly sorry, I had no idea. The manager stammered, her face growing even paler. Do you think ignorance excuses rudeness? My grandfather queried. In contrast to my grandfather's calm demeanor, the manager was sweating profusely and frozen in place. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to relay a message to your company CEO. I'm not interested in doing business with a company that has a manager like you. Well, wait a minute, please, the manager exclaimed, but my grandfather ignored her pleas. My granddaughter joined a company with a great motto: stay healthy, work hard, play hard, and live a long life. I thought the existence of quirky managers was necessary for the growth of the company. But your personality and behavior are harmful, he concluded. If you disagree with what I say, you can ignore it or spread bad rumors about me. My granddaughter has been recording all of this with her camera. Let's see whose side the world is on. With that, he left the scene. As my grandfather had said, I had been recording from the beginning of the trip with a camera hanging around my neck, capturing memories with my grandparents. I had forgotten, but the camera was still rolling at that moment. I began, uncertain of how to react. The manager, trembling, tried to cling to my grandfather but was bluntly told, "It's too late now," and collapsed on the spot. Wait a minute, can't you do something to help? She pleaded, turning to me for assistance after being coldly brushed off by my grandfather. I refuse. You always say there's nothing a newbie like me can do, I retorted, returning the sarcasm she had given me just the other day. Despite my anger, I managed to keep it in check and even flashed a smile. Yeah, I could probably be an actress too, I thought to myself. Then at the start of the week at work, there was an issue with the manager. The executive who led the running club stood tall in our department since the morning. Our company credo is to practice living healthily, working well, playing well, and living a long life. We welcome hard work, but that doesn't mean forcing people to work, especially not if it compromises their physical and mental health. Executives who dump unreasonable amounts of work on their subordinates are merely showing their lack of managerial skills. The managing director's voice echoed throughout the floor. Excuse me? The manager, seemingly taken aback by being attacked first thing in the morning, was about to ask something calmly while clenching her fist. But the executive continued, Here, we have the time cards from last Friday to today. There were 5 employees who came to work on Friday and stayed until Saturday morning. 3 people worked on their days off on Saturday and Sunday, and this morning, Angelique came in early. The manager seemed more and more perplexed as she was presented with these records. What does that mean? She asked, her tone uncertain. I addressed the confused manager, prompted by the managing director. If I may, you instructed me to finish organizing and analyzing a massive amount of data by the start of the week. and told me to work during holidays if necessary. But it was impossible for me alone. Just then, the executive happened to pass by, so I consulted with the people around me. With cooperation across departments, we managed to complete the task as you instructed, spending the amount of time and manpower I just explained. Since the running club members who helped this time were present at the executives' meeting, I took the opportunity to thank them again. I only worked from Friday night to Saturday morning and early this morning after returning from the trip, so I was hardly any help. But thank you so much for helping me, I added, bowing. In response, I received kind words such as, "We help each other out in times of trouble." And that's what running buddies are for. The manager finally seemed to grasp the situation, and this time she came at me, crossing departments. "You say I didn't authorize such a thing," she accused, seeming intent on blaming me for overstepping her authority. "I approved it," declared the managing director. At these words, the manager was frozen in shock. The newbie in the running group, who always had a smile on her face, was in deep trouble, I heard someone murmur. Upon hearing the situation, I found out they've been burdened with an absurd workload. It would have been fine to leave it be, but since it was work necessary for the company, I took charge and gained everyone's cooperation. I apologized for the post-approval, but first, the managing director's stare bore into the manager. I can't forgive the base motives behind burdening a hard-working employee who's trying to be filial to their grandparents with an impossible task just for harassment, were the most forceful words I'd ever heard the managing director say. His face softened a bit. The other day, my grandchild who visited me cooked up some fried eggs. Heaven recently learned how to make them. They were overly charred and even had eggshells in them, a real mess. But it was the first time my grandchild had cooked something with such dedication. To me, it was the best feast ever, he shared, overlapping his feelings for his grandchild with the sentiments a supervisor should have for their subordinates. Despite the kitchen being a complete mess from my grandchild's cooking, my wife was in high spirits all day. That's just how it is. When I told them it was delicious, the proud smile on the young face was the most endearing thing. The managing director continued, his unexpected story bringing tears to the employees' eyes as they shared memories of their own grandparents. "I still can't forget the taste of the rice porridge my grandma made me when I was sick, and the pat on the back my grandpa gave me, saying, 'Pain, pain, go away,' seemed to heal me faster." The employee reminisced, almost bursting out laughing at the managing director's doting grandparents' stories. Feeling a lump in my throat, I wondered if a present for their grandparents could elicit such an emotional response. The people who helped me that day told me as I bowed, "If you think you're causing trouble, the best way to show us respect is to go and have as much fun as possible." And they set me off on my trip. I love this company, all of you, and of course my job. That's why it's so frustrating to see part-time workers and employees like me being targeted and quitting due to unreasonable demands, I voiced, mustering all the courage I could. A warm round of applause erupted from those around me. However, the manager seemed irritated by this and confronted me. "Do you think it's okay to talk like that?" she challenged. The managing director quickly reprimanded her. "Silence. If you want to stay with this company, you'll lose all your titles and privileges and be demoted to the same status as a new employee. Naturally, you'll be starting from today. So the employee who joined a little before you, Angelique, will be your senior. You should be careful with your words." Upon hearing that the president had also approved, the manager shook her head intensely and yelled, "No, I won't accept this." But there was no help for her. Instead, everyone's cold glares focused on her. "If you don't like it, you're welcome to submit a resignation letter anytime," the managing director concluded. And so the downfall of the manager known as the Empress began. Afterwards, she was literally demoted to a rank-and-file employee. She stuck around the company for a bit, but maybe she couldn't handle the tough treatment she was getting because one day, she just stopped coming in. A few days later, her resignation letter came in the mail. Around that time, our company was being covered on TV. The show titled Morning Exercise. Bonds Beyond Titles was aired, and they even talked about me and my grandparents. I heard later that the viewers loved our company rule: don't tolerate unfairness. The unjust female manager remained anonymous, but the clients clearly knew who she was. Rumor is that she doesn't stand a chance of finding a job in the same industry again. Meanwhile, our company was able to do business with my grandfather's company without any problem. Working with relatives can be a bit embarrassing, but it also keeps me on my toes. Plus, I've become even more popular within the company due to my legendary showdown with a female manager. Whoa, you're so motivated. I want to work with you once I finish graduate school. My best friend recently told me. I'm hoping that'll happen too, I replied. I've started saving again because I want to travel with my grandparents without any worries this time. It'll take time since all I can do is save bit by bit, but just sit tight, Grandma and Grandpa. I'm going to continue to cherish my precious time from here on out. We're using your mother-in-law's savings for this trip, Carol announced, her tone oddly casual. It'll eventually become Tyler's inheritance anyway, so it's fine, right? She added, as if to justify their actions. My brother and his wife had rushed over immediately after my mother passed away, not to offer condolences, but to seize her bank book and withdraw her savings before I could even submit her death certificate to the government office. You used Mom's money, huh? I managed to ask, trying to suppress my anger. Carol's response was shockingly nonchalant. Yeah, we spent about $10,000 on the trip. Oh. The audacity of my brother and his wife, conspiring to use my mother's money without permission, made me furious for a moment. But then I remembered something. These people didn't know. I couldn't help but laugh. My condolences, I said, barely holding back my laughter. Carol looked puzzled by my sudden outburst. What's wrong with you? Did the shock of us using the money make you go crazy? Of course, I wasn't going crazy. I just couldn't help but laugh when I imagined the surprised faces of my brother and his wife when they found out the truth and faced their miserable fate. Their carefree days were probably numbered. I am Samantha, a very ordinary office worker raised by kind parents. My parents were always good-natured, constantly thinking about what they could do for others. Their kindness sometimes led them to being deceived or burdened with unfair responsibilities, but I admired them nonetheless. However, my brother Tyler had a completely different personality. He was always calculating what was beneficial for him and acted accordingly. To him, our parents, who would go out of their way to help others, were incomprehensible. As Tyler grew up, his rebellion against our parents intensified. In high school, he began to demand more money from them, saying, "If you can afford to do something for others, you can give me more allowance." Despite accepting Tyler's personality, our parents never changed their beliefs. Their unwavering character only frustrated him more. Tyler's negative feelings towards our parents only grew stronger in college. Taking advantage of the fact that our parents paid for his tuition, Tyler spent his college days partying and eventually failing a year, causing them trouble. Parents should naturally devote themselves to their children, right? Or can you only be kind to others but not your own family? Tyler would argue, justifying his selfish behavior. After graduating college, Tyler moved out and started living on his own. Although he left home without notice, he complained. Living a decent life on his first paycheck seemed impossible for Tyler. He kept returning to our parents' house for living expenses before heading back to his own place. Concerned about him, our parents kept giving him money whenever he asked. When I finally got a job, I decided to support our parents financially in place of Tyler. "Samantha, it's your hard-earned money, so you can use it however you like," my parents said. Despite their words, I continued to give them money, treating it as their grocery expenses. This routine continued for several years. Tyler, who only showed up to ask for money, unexpectedly invited me and our parents to a restaurant to talk. When we arrived, a beautiful woman was sitting next to Tyler. "Dad, Mom, Samantha, let me introduce you. This is my girlfriend, Carol," Tyler said, and Carol nodded politely. "I've decided to marry Carol. We'll be busy preparing for our wedding and our new life together, but I hope you'll support us." I initially thought Tyler meant support in terms of caring for Carol, but it became clear that his idea of support was entirely different. He asked our parents to cover the expenses for his wedding and their new home. Knowing our parents' inability to refuse help, Tyler skillfully persuaded them to foot the bill for everything. Even after the wedding and the purchase of their new home, he continued to rely on them for money. Carol, his wife, grew accustomed to this lifestyle and began living more extravagantly. However, this lavish lifestyle was short-lived. Our father's health deteriorated and he was hospitalized. Even with insurance, hospital stays are expensive. To ensure our retired parents wouldn't struggle financially, Tyler had to reconsider his reliance on them. I proposed to my brother that we both shoulder the burden of the hospital bills. You've been living at home and receiving assistance from mom and dad, and you've had a fair share of financial support from them too, right? This is the time for us to step up and help them, I reasoned. But my brother didn't see it that way. Why should I? He retorted. It's Dad's fault for not taking care of his health. He neglected himself while always helping others. That's his responsibility. Following that conversation, my brother stopped visiting our parents' house altogether. Neither he nor Carol, his wife, made a single visit to our father while he was in the hospital. It was my mother and I who desperately took care of him until he passed away. Even when we informed them of our father's death, they didn't offer any assistance with the funeral arrangements. They briefly showed up at the funeral but failed to greet our relatives properly before leaving. Our relatives looked at them with disdain, but they seemed indifferent. My mother, who had bravely taken on the role of chief mourner during the funeral, began to lose her energy after the funeral, clearly affected by the loss of my father. Tyler, Mom has been feeling down lately. She wants to see you. Can you visit her at home sometimes? I asked my brother. After a brief pause, he responded, By the way, what happened to Dad's inheritance? It all went to Mom. It seems they had decided that's what they would do when Dad was still alive, I informed him. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I felt a foreboding sense of dread and immediately cautioned my brother. Mom has control of the money now, right? He inquired. Yes, but listen carefully, I urged, sensing his intentions. Mom is emotionally vulnerable right now. Don't even think about taking advantage of her financially, okay? I need you to come and support her. That's what's important. What's the point of going if I can't get any money out of it? It's not worth my time, he retorted dismissively. Despite my insistence that we wouldn't be providing him with any financial assistance, my brother never set foot in our parents' house again. Then, just 6 months after our father's passing, our mother also succumbed. Despite her weakened state, my brother showed no concern. Upon learning of her death, he hurried back to our parents' house. I hoped he would fulfill his duties as the eldest son during the funeral. But to my dismay, he and his wife vanished as soon as it began. Frantically, I tried calling his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. In the end, I assumed the role of chief mourner in his absence, managing to navigate through the funeral proceedings alone. Several days later, I finally managed to get in touch with my brother. Samantha, this is Carol, came the voice on the other end. Where's Tyler? I asked anxiously. He's busy with boarding procedures and can't come to the phone. Carol replied casually. Boarding procedures? Where are you? We're at JFK Airport. We're leaving the United States in a few hours. Lol. My heart sank as I processed the revelation. You're leaving the United States and going abroad? Yes, we're going on an international trip, Carol confirmed, devoid of any hint of remorse or regret. I was taken aback by my brother and his wife's swift decision to embark on an overseas trip immediately after our mother's passing. However, what Carol uttered next left me utterly astounded. We're really grateful to our mother-in-law, you know. Thanks to her, we're able to enjoy this luxurious trip abroad, Carol remarked, her tone laced with casualness. Puzzled, I questioned, what do you mean by that? We used our mother-in-law's savings for this trip. After all, it was going to be Tyler's inheritance anyway, so why not use Mom's savings? Carol explained nonchalantly. How did you manage to get that money? I inquired, my anger simmering beneath the surface. We borrowed her bank book and seal when we visited her house. We knew we wouldn't be able to withdraw money once the death certificate was submitted, so we hurried, Carol confessed, revealing the true reason behind their rush to our mom's house after her demise. So you used Mom's money, I stated, trying to contain my frustration. Carol's response was surprisingly blaze. Yes, we've already spent $10,000 on trip expenses. It's a good thing Tyler's plan worked out. Initially, I was furious at the audacity of my brother and his wife for dipping into our mom's savings without permission. But then, a realization struck me. They didn't know. I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. Serves you right, I thought to myself. Perplexed by my sudden outburst of laughter, Carol questioned, What's wrong with you? Did the shock of us using the money make you lose your mind? Tyler is the eldest son, so it's natural for him to inherit more, right? I responded between laughs. Sure, that's fine. I'll give up my inheritance so Tyler can inherit everything. That was your plan all along, wasn't it? Upon hearing this, Carol's demeanor shifted to one of delight. Oh my, you're quite understanding, huh? By the way, please make sure to arrange for all of Mama's mail to be sent to your house from now on. Don't worry, it's a simple task. I'll let Tyler know, she concluded cheerfully before hanging up the phone. I didn't hear from my brother again until they returned from their trip. Samantha, Carol told me you're giving up your inheritance, my brother stated as soon as he called. Yes, but more importantly, did you handle the mail forwarding for Mom's mail? I asked. Yeah, I took care of it as soon as we got back, he replied. But to know you're not going to change your mind later, are you? You won't say you should have inherited after all? I inquired. Of course not. I still believe my decision was the right one, he'd affirmed confidently. Well, it's only right that I, the eldest son, inherit everything, he added with a chuckle before ending the call. However, a few weeks later, he called again, sounding panicked. There's a collection notice addressed to Mom in her mail. What's this about? He asked anxiously. Oh, is it from the bank? I speculated. Our parents always wanted to help people in need and would accept any requests, including financial ones. As we delved into the matter, it became apparent that our parents had accumulated substantial debt. The debt outweighed their savings, making inheritance a risky proposition that could potentially leave them in a dire financial situation. Did you know about this? My brother accused, his voice rising. You knew Mom had debt, right? Why didn't you say anything? There was no point. What you're saying is meaningless, I retorted. If I had known, I would have given up the inheritance too. That's impossible, he exclaimed. Why the hell is it impossible, Tyler? You took money from Mom's bank account to go on vacation, didn't you? I countered. So what? What does that have to do with giving up the inheritance? He shot back. It's a big deal. What you did is considered a tacit acceptance of the inheritance, I explained. It's a legal concept. Let me break it down for you so you can understand. I explained to my brother that by withdrawing money from our deceased family member's account for his own use before the inheritance process, it was legally seen as a tacit acceptance of the inheritance. I have never heard of such a thing, he rebutted. Of course not, I replied. Not many people would even consider using a deceased family member's savings for their own selfish desires, so it doesn't come up in conversation. You're just making stuff up because you want the inheritance for yourself. I have a lawyer friend, you know. They'll find out if you're lying, my brother threatened before abruptly ending the call. Later he called back, but this time, his bravado was replaced by a sense of resignation. Samantha, you were right. I can't give up the inheritance now, he admitted. It seemed his lawyer friend had given him the same answer I did. Finally understanding the gravity of the situation, my brother realized that he had inherited not just assets, but also the debt our parents had accrued. Despite his protests, it became clear that he was partially responsible for the financial mess, having frequently begged our parents for money without knowing the extent of their debt. Desperate to find a way out of his predicament, my brother attempted to persuade me. Hey, Samantha, our parents are gone, and it's just us siblings now, right? Isn't this the time to join forces? He proposed. What do you mean by join forces? I questioned, wary of his intentions. I think we should work together to pay back our parents' debt. Now's the time to show our filial piety, my brother proposed, his tone almost pleading. I sighed heavily at his selfish suggestion, which felt like too little, too late. What are you talking about? When Dad was in the hospital, I suggested we should help our parents together, but you pushed me away, I reminded him. I was busy at the time, he defended himself. Regardless of how busy you were, you didn't visit Dad in the hospital even once, and you didn't support our grieving mother afterward. I don't want to hear the words filial piety from someone like you ever again, I retorted, feeling a surge of frustration. With nothing left to say, I left my brother hanging. Have you ever done anything for someone else, Tyler? I know you took advantage of our kind parents, but there's no one who will help someone who can't do anything for others, even if they're family. But if you don't help me, Carol and I can't pay back the debt by ourselves. Are you going to abandon your brother? We're family, he pleaded desperately. When Dad was in the hospital, you abandoned him, saying it was his own fault for not managing his health. This time, using Mom's savings is your own fault. I countered, feeling the weight of disappointment settling between us. I regret that, okay? I've changed, my brother's voice pleaded through the phone. Have you? I still think you're just desperate to reduce your own debt. And even if you've changed, the person you should apologize to is no longer in this world. It's too late." I interjected firmly, cutting him off before hanging up the phone. I had no intention of helping him. After all the trouble he had caused our parents throughout the years, burdened with debt and unable to live the carefree life they once had, Tyler and Carol's relationship quickly turned sour. However, living separately would only incur more expenses. Unable to afford even the moving expenses, they had no choice but to continue their married life together, bickering all the while. At first, they tried to save money and pay off the debt little by little from their salaries, but it didn't last long. Neither Tyler nor Carol could forget their luxurious lifestyle, and they would secretly spend money behind each other's backs, causing their debt to never decrease. As a result, they blamed each other for their inability to reduce the debt further, damaging their relationship. Their marriage continued to crumble in this vicious cycle. On the other hand, I finally found the time to properly mourn our parents. I remembered how during our parents' funeral, countless attendees tearfully expressed their gratitude for the help our parents had provided them when they were in need. Realizing how many people our parents had helped made me feel even more proud of them. It was ironic that my brother, who had never shown any gratitude and had always caused trouble for our parents, ended up shouldering the debt that resulted from their acts of kindness. Even though they were drowning in debt, I still admired our parents for never giving up on helping others. With these thoughts in mind, I continued to pay my respects to our parents at the family altar every day. My name is Amy Snyder, and I'm 27 years old. I reside with my father and mother. Our family has always stuck together as a trio since my early years. Growing up, I've always admired my dad. He's the epitome of hard work, running his own bustling business. Though his schedule keeps him away from home most of the time, whenever he finds a moment, he dedicates it to me. On his off days, he prioritizes spending time with me, proving himself to be an exceptional father. My mom, however, paints a different picture. As far back as I can recall, she has never been employed. While she tends to household matters, she's never lent support to my dad's business or pursued a career outside our home. Despite our comfortable lifestyle, with my mom often seen socializing and attending events, her lack of involvement in my life has left me feeling somewhat neglected. There were moments of profound loneliness, but my dad's unwavering presence always filled that void. He understood the indifference my mom held towards me and made it his mission to ensure I never felt neglected or alone. As I grew older, my mother's tendency to break promises became apparent. While my dad's commitments were steadfast, my mother's casual approach to promises left me disillusioned. I learned not to hold her pledges in high regard. Conversely, my dad's reliability and trustworthiness garnered my admiration. I even entertained thoughts of joining his company after graduating from university. Being the only child, I saw it as a way to honor my father's legacy and continue his work. Upon reaching my 20s, my father began imparting invaluable wisdom during our outings for drinks. Meanwhile, my mother's involvement in my life remained superficial. The only time she interjected was during my sophomore year of college when I expressed my desire to join my father's company. "Dad, I want to work at your company after graduation. I'm already preparing for it. I want to follow in your footsteps someday," I announced eagerly. "Amy, are you sure about that? A girl doesn't need to pursue such endeavors." My mother intervened, her words dripping with traditional expectations. "Why not? I want to work hard like Dad," I insisted. "A woman should find a good man and let her husband provide for her," she countered, echoing typical sentiments. Disheartened by her lack of understanding, I chose not to engage further. I refused to live a life tethered to someone else's ambitions, mirroring my mother's existence. I had always aspired to become an independent woman, determined to navigate through my college years on my own terms. After that pivotal moment, I dedicated myself to diligent study, paving the path to join my father's company immediately after graduation. Though my mother remained unconvinced, it seemed she eventually resigned herself to my decision. "If you choose to live this way, so be it. But remember, you'll bear the consequences of not heeding your mother's advice," she remarked resignedly. "If you're willing to accept that, then do as you please." So I followed her directive by stepping into my father's company, inadvertently widening the chasm between my mother and me. Conversely, my bond with my father deepened as we spent more time together. Reflecting on it now, I realized my mother wasn't pleased with the turn of events. Upon joining my father's company, he invested considerable effort in my training, which, unbeknownst to me, was driven by his declining health. It took him nearly half a year to acquaint me with the intricacies of the job before he collapsed at our workplace, swiftly whisked away to the hospital. Over the next 5 years, he valiantly battled his illness. "Emmy, how's the company faring without your dad?" my mother inquired, her concern veiled by skepticism. "It's challenging, but everyone's rallying behind me. Dad entrusted me with everything I need," I replied confidently. "Well, as long as that's the case, just ensure you don't leave the company to ruin as the second generation," she cautioned, her words tinged with apprehension. "You lack any genuine interest or affection for the company. You're merely preoccupied with others' perceptions," I retorted, disheartened by her lack of faith. During my father's illness, our disagreements were frequent. Despite his weakening state, he made sporadic visits to the company, emphasizing its significance. "These employees in this company are invaluable treasures to me, but I must relinquish my hold on them," he confessed, his voice laced with emotion. "Amy, I've witnessed your dedication over the years. I trust you to safeguard this place and everyone here. I don't know if I can emulate you, Dad, but I'll strive to uphold your legacy," I pledged solemnly. From that day forth, the mantle of leadership was bestowed upon me. With my father mostly confined to the hospital, my days were consumed with the company's affairs, leaving little time for homecomings. I prioritized visiting him regularly, carving out time amidst my busy schedule. My mother, on the other hand, fulfilled only the basic duties, such as delivering changes of clothes to him. Even that seemed to inconvenience her. I couldn't help but wonder about her feelings towards my father. Did she lack any sense of gratitude or compassion for his illness? The thought left me feeling sorry for him, recalling the sacrifices he made for me during my childhood, a time when my mother's affection remained elusive. Despite my exhaustion, I made a concerted effort to visit him as often as possible, a routine that persisted for about a year until he peacefully passed away in his sleep. Amidst the whirlwind of tasks that followed, I barely had a moment to grieve. My mother, oblivious to my emotional turmoil, expected me to handle everything from funeral arrangements to hospital paperwork. Realistically, I knew I couldn't rely on my mother, who had never ventured beyond the confines of our home. So I silently assumed responsibility for the myriad tasks. The day after the funeral, my mother broached the subject. "Amy, now that the funeral's over, you've settled down, haven't you?" she inquired. With a heavy heart, I accepted the reality of the situation. "Please leave this house. I've just inherited 200 million yen, so I have no use for you anymore." "Thank you," she declared, as though it were a mere formality. Her words stung, but I had anticipated them. Further discussion seemed futile. Did she truly believe that wealth could replace familial bonds and absolve her of responsibility? With a multitude of questions swirling in my mind, I made the decision to depart. The next day, I arranged for the sale of all belongings associated with me, leaving my mother utterly surprised at the speed of my departure. I had meticulously planned my departure, but I harbored a secret from my mother. Despite her claim of inheriting 200 million yen, my father had entrusted all financial matters to me, designating me as the sole inheritor. Not a single yen remained for my mother, a decision my father made adamantly while he was still in good health. "Your mother lacks the understanding of money management or prudent spending. I want you to provide her with monthly household expenses," he instructed me. "If she receives a lump sum, she's likely to squander it immediately. If she protests, refuse to give her a penny." Though my father's last words were spoken in jest, he handed me an SD card containing a video message addressed to my mother. While I never envisioned showing it to her, recent events suggested its necessity might arise sooner than later. After my departure, I anticipated my mother would reach out to me, but her summons came sooner than expected. "Come home immediately," she demanded over the phone. "I'm working, Mom. What's the matter?" I replied, feeling a pang of annoyance. "I just need to talk to you." "Please come quickly," she insisted. With a sigh, I reluctantly headed back to our family home, clutching the SD card in my hand. As soon as my mother laid eyes on me, she launched into accusations. "You absconded with all of your father's inheritance, didn't you? I knew something was amiss when you left so abruptly. Hand over your father's inheritance to me now," she demanded, her greed palpable. "How selfish can you be? You can't even fulfill your duties as a mother," I retorted, my frustration simmering. In response, I silently extended the SD card to her. Confused, she inspected it. "What's this?" she queried. "I suppose you don't even know how to watch this," I remarked, masking my disappointment. I retrieved my laptop, inserted the SD card, and played the video. On the screen, my father appeared, as vibrant as I remembered him. I couldn't help but wonder how my mother would react to this video letter. Silently, I exited the room, leaving her to watch it alone. I had never witnessed my mother defy my father before, but now, in the wake of his passing, would his words resonate with her? Upon returning to the room, I found my mother in tears, her emotions laid bare. I was taken aback, my mother, shedding tears over a video of my late father. I was intrigued by the contents of the video letter he had left for her, but hesitated to watch it myself. Consequently, I remained clueless about the cause of her tears. "Mom, are you okay?" I inquired, concern lacing my voice. "Yes, I'll be fine. For now, I understand. I'll adhere to your father's wishes and entrust everything to you from now on. Please, go home for today. Call me once you've had time to gather yourself," she replied, her tone subdued. Sensing her desire for privacy, I left promptly, pondering over how my father had managed to silence my mother. Questions swirled in my mind as I made my way home. Nearly a month passed without any communication from my mother, prompting concern to gnaw at me. During my lunch break, I decided to pay a visit to my parents' house, hoping to check on her. However, she wasn't home. That evening, I returned once more, relieved to find the lights on. "Sorry for dropping in unexpectedly. I came by this afternoon, but you weren't home, so I grew concerned," I explained upon seeing her. "I'm sorry, I was out for my part-time job during the day," my mother explained upon my return. "A part-time job?" I echoed incredulously. My understanding of my mother painted her as someone vehemently opposed to work. How had it come to this? "Didn't you watch that video?" "It was a video letter addressed to you," I retorted, baffled by her sudden change in behavior. "You can take it home." "You should watch it too, Hammy. Can I watch it?" I asked, extending the SD card to her. "Very well," she acquiesced, passing it back to me. Feeling a twinge of apprehension, I returned to the office and settled at my father's desk. With a deep breath, I played the video. "Honey, if you're watching this, it means you've not been able to communicate with Amy. First of all, thank you so much for helping me raise Amy until now. Without you, I don't think I could have managed the company while bringing up Amy." My father's voice resonated through the room. As his words continued, a sense of unease crept over me. Then he uttered something unexpected, something that shook me to my core. "You've taken care of Amy, even though she is not your child, and I have nothing but gratitude for you. You've stood by my side for so many years, but as a result, you've given up on your dreams and have reached your age without earning your own living. For that, I take responsibility because I have allowed you to live a life of luxury. I'm sure you'll be in trouble when I'm gone." "I'm not my mother's child," I blurted out, the realization hitting me like a ton of bricks. But then it clicked. Despite the lack of overt affection, she had cared for me every day, doing the bare minimum for a child who wasn't her own. Who was this person? "I didn't register our marriage because you told me you felt bad for your sister, so I ended up supporting your living and didn't do anything else. I'm sorry, but once I'm gone, I worry about the rest of your life. There's no one to support you, and I've taken your life away." I sat in disbelief as my father spoke, his words flowing with unexpected clarity. It was all news to me, his concerns, his regrets, his hopes for our future. Throughout the night, I grappled with the weight of his revelations before confronting my mother the following day. "Mom, I watched the video from Dad yesterday. You know it all now," I began, my voice tinged with a mixture of confusion and realization. "I raised you because I was asked to. That's all," she confessed, her tone heavy with the weight of untold truths. "What happened to my biological mother?" I pressed, seeking clarity amidst the swirling chaos of newfound information. "You were the child of my sister and your father," she explained somberly. "My sister died right after giving birth to you, and I promised your distressed father that I would help raise Amy. I would become your mother." With her revelation, everything fell into place, even the parts I had previously only imagined. I learned of my mother's sacrifice, how she had set aside her own dreams to fulfill her promise to my father. I recalled how my mother used to work in a diner, her vibrant spirit and dedication palpable. Her dream had been to own her own diner, yet when she chose to become my mother, she shelved that dream. However, inspired by my father's words and prompted by the memory of her deferred dream, my mother made a decision. She resolved to reclaim that dream, embarking on a journey to pursue it once more. Currently, she is undergoing training as a part-timer, determined to turn her dream of owning a diner into reality. I should have done this earlier. Working is fun and suits me. I had no idea, so it's my fault you didn't work. I'm really sorry for not knowing anything, my mother admitted, her tone filled with regret. It's not your fault, Amy. I made the decision myself. But I'm not good with children, so I couldn't handle you well. I'm the one who caused you trouble, she continued, taking responsibility for her actions. As we conversed, I realized it was the first time we had such an open dialogue. At this stage in my life, I finally felt like I had come to understand my mother a bit better. Our conversations became more frequent, leading us to a decision to use the money left by my father to fund the opening of her shop. Once she started working, my mother became somewhat more humble. She hesitated when the topic of funds for the shop came up, a behavior that would have been unimaginable not too long ago. While maintaining my regular job, I also assisted with the opening of her diner. This brought me into frequent contact with my mother, fostering a newfound relationship between us. Regarding living expenses, she insisted on managing them with her own income, refusing to accept help from my father's inheritance, promising that you'll tell me if you're struggling. After all, Dad trusted me to take care of you, I urged her. I'll be fine living on my own. It doesn't cost that much. But in terms of my diner's expenses, she trailed off, her determination evident. I'll be relying on you. Of course, I'm looking forward to it too, so do your best, my mother encouraged, her eyes filled with hope and anticipation. After many years, we finally became a real family, and now we are living harmoniously. She isn't my birth mother, and perhaps it was just the right time for me to learn this truth. Your diner is finally going to open tomorrow. Your dream is coming true, I remarked, filled with pride as I watched her dedication. Seeing you work so hard at that company reminded me of my own dreams when I was younger. I believe that's why I've made it this far. It's all thanks to you and your father. Thank you so much, Mom. I expressed my gratitude, feeling a deep sense of appreciation. Promise me to always be my mom, Amy, she implored, her voice filled with sincerity. From now on, let's get along even better than before. After all, we only have each other, I replied, feeling a newfound sense of closeness. Upon my father's death, the truth was revealed, and I accepted the reality of our situation. Deciding to live on with just my mother and me, I contemplated moving back to my hometown and living together with her again. I don't cook, so my mother is concerned about my poor diet and is supportive of me coming back, I explained, feeling touched by her care. My father would probably be surprised that we're getting along so well. His house, company, and inheritance that he left behind. I'll protect them at all costs while continuing to get along with my mother in order to become a real family, I vowed, determined to honor my father's legacy. We visited the graves of my father and my biological mother, my mother's older sister, to give our daily life updates. After going through the process of adoption, I finally became registered as my mother's daughter, forging a bond that